Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to part 3 of my tutorial on doing a dragon design from a Colour in Heaven magazine, and the artwork in this issue is by Anastasia, Elly, Koldareva. I think that's how you pronounce it. On the previous tutorials I did the dragon and the tree house. I have done little bits and pieces off camera, the stems that are coming off the tree house, and I started doing the toadstools. I was using two different pencils for this tutorial, and one of them is Castle Art Supplies. I'm going to work on the leaves today, and I'm going to try and do the leaves slightly differently because I'll be using the same colours. So these leaves here have line art, included. So I'm going to do those very similar to a previous tutorial I posted. Using my lightest green, I'm going to colour in between those lines. Now, some of the leaves are bent in a slightly different way. This one, for instance, is bent upwards. So I'm going to do this one slightly different because I'm still kind of thinking about where the light is for the leaves. So I put a little bit of light green there because I'm probably going to have to darken that down. This one's bent round. So again, I will just put a lightest there, and I can change it later on. Right, there's one there. Using my next darkest green, I will highlight some of the lines for shading. Now with this leaf, I'm going to use these lines here as a guideline for doing my shading. So that includes, let's turn it slightly, make it easier for me, doing the middle as well. And I'm going to shade around the edges of these, leaves. If I feel that the lightest green isn't far enough along, to meet up with the edge, I'll adjust for each leaf as I go along. If I see a leaf that is overlapping, I will be putting a little bit more shadow in there as well. Now with this leaf, I'm going to put all of this section darker. And also shading on just around the edge of the inside of that leaf. And again, adjust my lighter sections. This leaf is similar. It's going to be darker underneath because the leaf is twisted. And as I thought, I'm going to adjust where I've put the lighter sections. But that's okay because I did it in light layers, so I can do that. And extend the lightest colour to the ends of that leaf. Do this leaf slightly different. Pull that darker. And make that lighter. A section there and just extend that. I want to do the rest of the leaves off camera because there's quite a few. I'll come back to this. Now I finished off the leaves with the second darker screen, and obviously I adjusted as I went along. This is only a first rough layer. Now I use my darker screen and I'm going over the lines where I coloured in the second darker screen, just to emphasise those a little bit more. Again, I'm only going to do some of the leaves to show you, otherwise you'll be sitting watching me do every leaf. It's just the same technique for all of them. So darkening the middle, darkening the lines that's already drawn in for this leaf, and around the edges. Also, I'll do all the stems in this darker green. Now, such as this leaf that was folded upwards, I will extend the darker shading from the bottom and a little bit in the middle. If there's a little bit of overlap, and I will use this darker green to emphasise that. Right, this leaf here, I'll go over, I'll go into darkening the edge that's folded to emphasise that shadow, and just outline that inner line. These leaves are bent over, so I'm going to put a little bit more darker green on these and extend the tip darker. It's just looking at the shapes of the leaves and how you feel they're bent and being drawn, and just emphasising how you feel the light would hit that leaf, but also continue with the original idea of emphasising the lines. Now, it's not an exact science, but it makes for an interesting effect. This leaf here is bent upwards, so I'm going to make all of that in there darker. and just emphasize these. Section here as well, very similar. There's another little bit of shading here. I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow underneath there. And I'll continue with that and then come back to it. I've done one layer of all of the 3 greens I'm using for these leaves, and I also did the darkest green and went over with the lightest medium green for the stems. Even though I can keep a reasonable point with these pencils, I'm still struggling with the very, the narrow bits on those stalks. So kind of frustrating sometimes when you go over the lines, but it can't be helped really. Now I'm going to adjust where I feel my medium green is going to be, because I'll be overlapping the medium green with the darkest green I've just put on to extend the shadow sections. Again, I'll just give you an idea of how I do that. One of the reasons I enjoy doing a light rough layer is because I can adjust it afterwards. You can't take away colour very well, and well, you can rub it out, but not all pencils work very well rubbed out. I'm also softening up the darker green lines, so not quite so harsh. And going over as well those overlapping sections. Now just work on the leaves that are slightly different. I feel you've probably got a good idea of how I do these leaves that have, have kind of facing you and on this design with the lines. And this one's slightly different, so I'm going to soften up that shadow. This one extended the shadow because it was bent down, so I'm going to soften that up and extend it a little bit. I'll go over the darker section on this leaf, this bent upwards, and again soften up those darker areas, extend it a little bit. I'm basically just going over all the darker lines I did with my dark green, with my medium green, and softening them up a little bit, extending them. I'll finish that off camera. Now I added another layer of my medium green to overlapping the darkest green and just to extend the shadow a little bit. Now, at this point, I'm wondering about blending, and I've decided instead of using a white pencil or a blender pencil, I'm going to use the lightest green I've got to see how that works out. It could be that I'll end up having to go over with the darker shade again, but I'll see how it looks. So I'm going over all of the leaves that I've just coloured with other layers with the lightest green, and it will blend in a little bit and soften up those other lines of the darkest greens. I've experienced my first broken lead problem with this pencil set, with this green that I'm using, and the only way I've found to be able to deal with that is to use a pencil sharpener and not expose as much of the lead. It's not ideal, but I managed to get some use out of the pencil then. I've only ever had one set of pencils that broke continuously, and that was very frustrating. They were lovely pencils to use, but they just broke all the time. These pencils as well, when I get to a certain amount of layers, I struggle. This will be the fourth layer I'm trying to put it down, and it's starting to slide off the paper a little bit. So I'm having to use as light a pressure as possible to be able to get some of this colour down. Right, I've done those leaves now. I think they've worked out quite well. Because of the issue I'm having with this pencil, I'm just going to leave it like that now. I may do a blender attempt later on, but I'll see how I feel later. Now I'm going to do these leaves here, and I want to do those leaves in the same colours, but try to colour them in a slightly different way. So I'm going to do the middle of these leaves in the pale green. And then I'm going to use my medium green. I'm just going to colour the tips on the inside sections of these leaves. And there's overlapping sections which has actually been coloured, done slightly darker with the line art. I'm just going to do that section as well in the medium green. A little bit of shadow. And the darkest green I'm going to do these middle sections and all the way around the edges of the leaf. That's the first layer for those leaves. And while we're on leaves, there is one or two other kinds of leaves, but I'm going to do them all the same way. With these leaves, there's these at the bottom of here. These are a similar shape, and some here. And I'm going to cover them with a light layer of green all over the leaf. These ones here, I'll do the same, because they're a similar shape. And the other leaves that are the same kind of shape are these ones here. So I'll do the same again. And that one's bent up, so I probably will do the shading slightly different on those, but I'll cover them over with light green first. There's some here as well. I'm trying to attempt to, even though I'm using the same green for all the leaves, to make them look different. Medium green, I'm going to colour from the bottom of each leaf up to halfway towards the end, overlapping the lightest green I've just put down. And again with this one, about halfway. It's giving you an idea. I'm going to do this light kind of leaf. It's rough. Now these ones here, some of them are bent over. So I'm going to do the similar with them, but do the shading slightly different if it's bent over. Right, and my darkest green, I'm going to do the same again, only not as far. So from the bottom of the leaf, overlapping the medium green, but not as far up. So you get a gradient effect. These ones here, again, gradient effect. It's a rough first layer. I can adjust it when I'm doing the other layers then. Now if I want more the medium green or the light green, and right, so there are the first layers for those other leaves, and I will now do 2-3 more layers on those leaves. I've done 2 more layers of the darker greens on these leaves and these, and now I'm going to go over all of those layers with the lighter green. With this leaf here, I'm just going to do the middle in the lighter green. Again, I'm having to be careful with the pencil at the moment now because it's got broken lead, so I'm going to use a lighter layer than I would normally do for a blended layer. Right, that's those leaves there. I like that effect. It's and I've managed to blend and soften in the other darker layers. Also, I'm going to do these leaves here, which is that's working from a gradient from the bottom, darker, middle, and then to the light. I'm going to overlap the medium green layer, but not go over to the darker. These leaves here were done in the same way, darker gradient to light. So I'm just going to overlap the medium green. We're not being able to sharpen this pencil as well with it breaking. I have to sharpen it a little bit more often, just as gently as I can. It's frustrating when you have a pencil that breaks. I extended the darker sections on these bottom leaves because it was overlapping, and I thought it would highlight that a bit better. This leaf here, I think I should have extended the medium green from there. Looks a bit better. I did do a little bit of shading on these little leaves here. I don't normally because they're so small. I thought I would have a go. This side, the leaves are slightly bigger, so I did the gradient effect on these. With the darker sections on this, I actually overlapped more with the medium and the dark. So as I'm doing with the medium light green, I overlap with the medium. I did the same with the other two colours. Now, they leaves. Put a little bit of shadow behind that section on that leaf because of the leaf above overlapping it. Right, they're the leaves done. I may later on in my own time do another medium layer green on those, but for now that's okay. So that's all the leaves done, and I also coloured in the green piece. It's where the claw is. There's a green patch of grass on top of some rock. So now it's time to do other parts of this. Now the next easiest part to do, I feel, is the flowers and the toadstools. Not too many here. The toadstools, I'm going to do the lightest part first. Light pressure. That's going away so it'll go darker. It's just like a general idea of where I think the light will be. It's coming from above. This one's the same. It's bending away, so I'll leave that slightly darker. Not done many toadstools in design, so these are still a learning curve for me. I'm going to colour the rest of the toadstool in the medium purple. And that part there is coming up a little bit, so I'm going to do that lighter. Extend that lighter section a little bit. And over here. And underneath this section, I'm going to, the toadstool, I'm going to do that darker. Because it's underneath the top of the plant. And the stem, I'm going to do part of it in darker. And that's causing a shadow there, so I'm going to just do that. Same with this part here, another shadow. And that edge, darker. Put in a lighter section now, and then I can overlap, darken some of that down. The medium purple. Let's extend a little bit with the medium purple. Right, that's the first layer for the toadstools. Now I'm going to look at the flowers. I'm going to cover the flowers in the lightest layer of purple first, and then put some shading in with the darker layers. It's almost like a base layer. Flowers here. Right, realise that I want them to leave, so I'll rub out that bit of purple and I'll colour that in later. Right, now I'm going to do a bit of shading on the flowers. They aren't very big, so I won't be doing loads of shading. It's Mr. Flower there. Just got my base light layer down, and now I'm going to add a little bit of shading. Satin these at the bottom. Those parts of the flower underneath, so I'm going to add a bit of shading there. Just light shading to emphasize the top parts of the flower. I'm going to darken that part down as well and just put a touch of darker purple at the base of each flower. Now these are short, so I'm going to just go around a little bit around the edges, leave the middle lighter. Again, these are shading in the part that's underneath. and just a little bit the base of each petal. And do the same with all the flowers, just darkening underneath to highlight the top petals, and just a little bit at the base of the top petals. Just rough at this point, and then I can adjust it if I need to. And using the lines to help me as well with the drawing. Now I'll use my darker purple just to highlight the darker sections a bit more. I won't cover all of the medium purple, it's just to almost go around the edges of where I did my shadows earlier. And these, I don't know what they call them actually. I'm going to do these in the darker purple so they stand out a little bit more. These flowers remind me of fuchsia. Right, that's the first layer. They need another couple more layers before I do the final blend on the flowers and the toadstools. I did all the flowers and the toadstools. The last layer on those I did the lightest of the lilac-y purple colours. It's quite a contrast between the dark and the light in that set of pencils, you know, the Castle Art. So I decided to do a blending layer with a blending pencil to try and even that out. I've done some of the flowers. I'll finish off the flowers and I'll do the toadstools. I just think it'll work, soften it up a little bit better. These pencils work quite nicely with the blender pencil. Some of my pencils don't. I mean, the Renoirs don't work very well at all with this blender pencil. And maybe that's because they're oil based instead of wax. No, I'm not sure. But these pencils work really nice with this blender pencil. So if I have a contrast like I do with this colour, it works better to blend. Softens it up a wee bit, doesn't look quite so harsh. Just using a light layer, you know, light pressure, not too heavy. And I think it has softened that up a little bit. Done all the other flowers. And now I'm going to do the toadstool. And I think the effect will be more noticeable on a larger, you know, object. Yeah, it's worked quite nice that. It just helps smooth the darker into that kind of harsher, lighter pink, purple. It's interesting when you get different pencils and they have like the same colours but in slightly different tones and mixing, you know, the gradients differently. I do have a set of Prismacolor premium pencils, and I must be honest, they are the best at doing that gradient with the pencil shades. My other pencils do tend to jump a bit, so I have a more difficult time when I'm doing my shading. Right, and that works much better, I think. Now I'm going to be working on the stonework, which are these steps, this section of the ground, and of course the little pebbles. And there's a wee bit of stonework at the back of there. But I'm just going to do on camera these steps in this section. I'm going to, with the steps, I'm going to highlight the lightest sections first. Going from what I said originally, the light coming down, it's going to catch these parts of the steps. It's a light layer, you know, it's not rough layer there. And this ground bit, I'm going to do one layer in this light bluey grey. And the colours I'm using are the same as what I did on the windows and doors. And I'm not going to cover over those pebbles just yet. The smaller ones I will, because it's just too small to try and highlight really, those pebbles. I'm just going to be having a hint of colour on the ground. I don't want it too dark. And then you've got this rock where the dragon has got its foot. Put one layer on there. Now I'm going to do the medium bluey grey and put a little bit of shadow in. Now come here for where the tree house is, and coming off the bottom of that door there will be some shadow. The shadows will be coming down from the tree house and from the foliage around the edges, extending out from the edge of the tree house. A little bit round this leaf. I'll do the other step the same, as highlighting, and I feel there would be, now this one I'll have a little bit more here because this is like underneath this step, so it's going to be mostly in shadow. This section where the top step overlaps the next step, put shadow in there. That is actually part of the ground, so I'm going to darken that in because it would be darker. Again, shadowing in over the overlap of those two steps, and this one again as well. Now I'm going to see this section here. I'm going to leave those and do those darker, in a darker grey, because they're the ends of the step that come down, so I wanted those to be a contrast. For the ground, I'm just going to do a little bit of shading in this medium grey underneath, where there's a little bit of foliage. Where the steps come round, I'll do that as well. They will cover the ground. In these sections between the foliage. And around this end step. And for this section of the back of here, this little bit of rock, I'm going to shade in between those two toes and down the edge where the grass would be overlapping, a little bit at the bottom. Now I'm going to put in the darker shading and the steps first. I'm very light touch with this because it's a lot darker. So around the edges. I'm not going to go in to do any, I want to keep that in light. So just around this leaf slightly. Underneath these steps, just a little bit. The overlap, one top step to the second. Again, it's this section where it overlaps. and that there. Now I'm going to put a very light layer on these sections. They're a bit patchy because I'm going to go over it with the medium. So that's that. And this bit of rock here again, just the very edges underneath the grass. A tiny wee bit in that corner. I'm going to go over the medium grey sections again, just to soften up that darker grey. I'm going to go over all of that, just to lighten it slightly. It's not quite so harsh. Just darkening in a little bit around the foliage again. Now this needs 1 or 2 more layers, so as always I'll do that off camera and then come back to this. Now I've done about 3 layers for the steps and underneath the steps, and just 1 more layer for the ground. I don't like personally doing too dark sections for big areas like ground and skies. Found I've spoiled so many projects doing that. So I'm now going to try and blend in the steps area. Now these pencils, the Renoir pencils that I've done this section in, don't work very well with this blender pencil, but it'll help a little bit. Right, now I'm going to have a little look at this section first. I'm going to have a little look at doing those stones. Staying with the greys, and some of them are just too small to do any kind of potential shading, so I'm just going to colour those in medium grey, just so they stand out from the floor grey, you know, the ground, the lighter grey. Now with the slightly larger stones, I'm just going to put a little bit of the dark charcoaly grey I'm using around the bottom edge of the stones, just to make them stand out a little bit. And with my lightest grey, I'm just going to gently go over those stones and push, soften up that darker line and just give the stones a little bit of a slightly different colour. I'm trying to create the impression that the stones are sitting on top of the ground. I think that works quite well, and because the stones are small, I don't feel the need to go over those anymore. So that completes that design, and I'm really pleased how that worked out. The colours worked really nice. The shade of green I used isn't quite the same as the palette I'd chosen. I didn't have anything in either the pencils I was using that was that close to that, but it works nice with the rest of the colours, so that's okay. And actually, it almost looks slightly fluorescent, and I like that. The colour palette where I've had to use those colours in certain ways, I think it's balanced. I've managed to do a balanced effect. So I hope that watching me do this and try to use limited colours and balance it out in different sections, so you can see it moves, like the purple moves across and the peachy colours move across. It looks balanced. I hope you found that useful watching this, if anybody's watching this. And I'll do this kind of thing again in future tutorials because it's kind of useful and it makes a nice effect. And when I started doing this, I found my colouring, I was pleased with it. I was happier with how my colouring projects were ending up. So thank you for watching, and I'll do something slightly different next time, and enjoy your colouring.